Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kinds, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host Brett Murphy, and for today's video I have a brand new top 10, or I guess top 20 for you all, as I am going to be counting down my picks for the top 20 movies of the 2020s so far. This is something I thought might be fun to do since we've now officially entered the midway point of the 2020s with 2025. And the idea is to continue updating this at the end of each year or beginning of the next one. It's also probably smart for me to point out that this is just my personal list, my favorite movies of the past 4 years, and not based on ratings, reviews, or a vote of some sort, just movies that I feel represent the decade the best so far. Of course, assuming I do continue doing this each year, who knows how things may change year over year as I continue to rewatch, reanalyze, see new movies, and change as a person. Before I hop into the actual video itself, I just wanted to let you all know that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my top 10 or top 20 or top 5 videos. We are closing in on 100 videos currently on that playlist for you to enjoy, so if top 10 videos are your thing, then be sure to check that out and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And if by some chance you don't, then feel free to suggest something you might like. Of course, this wouldn't be a Brett Murphy or I guess BamTube list if I didn't have some honorable mentions. The first of them being Godzilla -1. The long and short of this one is that I feel it completely redefined what Godzilla is and could be for a lot of people. It reframed Godzilla as the villain, gave us well-written human characters, and a story loaded with heavy themes, which has since left a lasting impact. Next is Zack Snyder's Justice League. Some might be surprised to see this one here, but simply put, I adored Zack Snyder's Justice League. Do I think his time with DC has passed and many people still need to move on? Yes, but that doesn't change the fact that I too championed the release of this cut after what Warner Bros. Did to him in the wake of a family tragedy, and when we got it, I adored every second of it. It's a shame we'll never see the rest of his vision fully realized, but in the end, they're just movies, and these characters existed long before Zack's time and will continue to thrive long after. Another honorable mention is the Iron Claw. Now, this one just squeaked in. It was a tough list to make. Even the honorable mentions had to be chopped down significantly. But look, this movie has just stuck with me, and I feel like that's true for a lot of people, especially that final scene. Efron was phenomenal, and overall this movie deserved so much more praise and awards recognition than it got. Next up, Alex Garland's Civil War. Some people aren't going to be happy about this one at all, but fun fact, it was actually on the top 20 until I watched one last 2024 movie that bumped it off the list. I know some people hated this movie, and I can see why, but I found it so engaging, which was mostly due to the focus on war photographers and not the American Civil War backdrop. A lot of this movie's depictions of violence and living through a civil war stood out to me and continues to help this movie stick out from the crowd. And the last honorable mention I will discuss in at least a little bit of depth is When Evil Lurks. This one is one of the most brutal horror movies I've ever seen. I know there are worse out there before you jump into the comments and say, what about so-and-so, what about this? But this movie's brutality and shocking moments aren't why it's being name-dropped as an honorable mention though. It's due to the unique story, excellent performances, and absolutely crushing conclusion. And look, you know what? There were some others I toyed with that I'll mention here for shits and giggles, which I guess technically makes this like a top 30 or more or something, but you know, sue me. Those ones were RRR, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Cha Cha Real Smooth, Sing Sing, Conclave, Memoir of a Snail, Killers of the Flower Moon, Pixar's Soul, and TMNT Mutant Mayhem. And so without further ado, let's hop right into things. Number 20 is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Yeah, believe me, I'm just as surprised as you are. Never in a million years did I think that yet another rendition of this classic tale would be this good. So good, in fact, that as we near the halfway point of the 2020s, I still think it's among the very best this decade has to offer. This one is much less of a kids movie than most of the other versions, and not that kids can't watch it, but for lack of a better term, because I have heard people in my own personal life use it, they may find it a little too artsy-fartsy. For me personally though, this was absolutely magical. Don't get me wrong, the original Disney animated version will forever hold a special place, but this one is just a far more mature, whimsical, and outlandish take on this iconic tale. I thought the music was magnificent. I loved the voice performances, and though it carries many of the same messages as this story normally does, I just felt the delivery was much stronger and hit me a lot harder. I mean, I was literally in tears near the end, and that doesn't happen a whole heck of a lot. I'm pretty sure there's only one other movie on this list that actually got me to cry. Guillermo del Toro and his late co-director Mark Gustafson undeniably delivered with this one, and I am so happy it exists. Just goes to show you that these remakes can be done well when handled with love, care, and the right intentions. In 19th place is The Wild Robot. Alright, so it's only been a couple of weeks since I first watched this one, and if you couldn't guess it already, this is the one that knocks Civil War off the list. But truth be told, I'm still trying to collect myself. Could this placement be linked to a little hint of recency bias? Perhaps. I can't deny that this is still very fresh in my mind. But what I can also say is that I very rarely finish a movie feeling like I did with this one. It's nothing short of incredible. A beautiful movie in every sense of the word. The animation is stunning. The messages and themes of belonging and purpose will pierce the hearts and minds of kids and adults alike. The voice work is simply splendid too. Lupita Nyong'o shines as Roz, with Pedro Pascal perfectly embodying the charming and quick-witted Fink, while Kit Connor brought tears to my eyes as the lost yet hopeful Brightbill. It's all truly magical and blends together seamlessly into a marvelously paced adventure. This is the only 2024 movie I gave a full 5 out of 5 stars to, and it totally deserves it. Though it's not my favorite movie of 2024, I do think it's the most well-rounded. I felt truly moved by the time the credits rolled, and dare I say, I think we might have an all-timer on our hands, folks. In 18th place is Palm Springs. Another wild card pick in the eyes of many, I would assume at least. But look, here's the long and short of it. This is probably my all-time favorite rom-com. I'm not a huge rom-com guy, I don't love them, I don't hate them either, but this, I love. From the performances, to the comedy, to the love story, to the themes, it all works for me. The first time I watched it, I thought, hey, that was pretty great. Now, every single time I've rewatched it, I've just bumped it up and up and up and up until the most recent time where I was like, you know what? This is a 10 out of 10 movie. I don't have a ton to say for this one because it's pretty straightforward. A guy stuck in a time loop, endlessly reliving the same day over and over again, that just so happens to be his girlfriend's best friend's wedding, is followed by the bride's sister, who then gets herself stuck in the same time loop as him. Together, the two learn a lot about each other and life as they try to find their way out and back to their normal lives. Like I said, pretty straightforward, yet wildly effective. Mostly thanks to the chemistry and endlessly charming performances of Andy Samberg and Kristen Milioti. Coming in at number 17 is The Fabelmans. Spielberg telling his own life story could have gone so horribly wrong, but thankfully it didn't. I freaking loved it. The movie's greatest strength is reminding me, and many others, why I fell in love with movies in the first place and why I still love them as much as I do. It also does a flawless job of showcasing why so many of us dream of breaking into the industry ourselves. It really is a beautiful, emotional, and inspiring tale, filled with imagination, important life lessons, and creativity. Some of the family melodrama does drag it down a bit, for me at least, not gonna lie, because I found a lot of it to be fairly basic. And contrary to popular opinion, considering she was nominated for an Oscar, I also felt that Michelle Williams' performance was fairly overhyped. Like, she's good, she's fine, but Academy Award worthy? Nah. Plus, let's not forget that this was Gabriel LaBelle's breakout role and he's bloody brilliant. Even though this is the first one on the list I have some little nitpicks with, its positives greatly outweigh its negatives, as it still ranks among my favorite movies of the last 4 years. In 16th place is Nimona. Okay, so this one came out of absolutely nowhere. I would argue it was the biggest surprise of 2023. A straight-to-Netflix animated movie with minimal marketing that ended up being Oscar nominated. Due to the things I just mentioned, I really dragged my feet with this one, and after finally watching it, finding out that it's nothing short of spectacular in every sense of the word, I had to have a good, hard look within. Why do I keep waiting so long to watch so many great movies? I gotta get my shit together. Anyway, this one's got wonderful performances, especially from our main duo, deeply touching and incredibly necessary themes and messages, all while being laugh-out-loud funny and authentically heartfelt. There's so clearly an immeasurable amount of love and passion gone into each and every frame of this movie. Though it does start a little slow, I don't always love the animation style, and not every single joke lands, I still feel like this is an absolutely necessary and worthwhile watch for all ages. Number 15, All Quiet on the Western Front. Probably my favorite war movie since Hacksaw Ridge. I think the plot summary from Letterboxd nails it pretty well. Paul Ballmer and his friends Albert and Mueller, egged on by romantic dreams of heroism, voluntarily enlist in the German army. Full of excitement and patriotic fervor, the boys enthusiastically march into a war they believe in. But once on the Western Front, they discover the soul-destroying horrors of World War I. This has to be one of the most brutal, visceral, and realistic war movies I've ever seen. It is a stunning feast for the eyes, with one of my favorite movie scores of the last few years as well. It's got artful direction and powerful lead performances while maintaining a consistent tone and brisk enough pace. It's captivatingly unflinching in its bleak depiction of the horrors of World War I. I loved that it offered a different perspective than we're normally used to, as we follow a young German soldier. And although some criticize it for being an unfaithful adaptation, I didn't need a page-for-page recreation. This is what happens when something continuously gets adapted over time. People iterate instead of replicate, and I think director and co-writer Edward Berger nailed it. In 14th place is John Wick Chapter 4. This is easily among the best action movies ever made, though I prefer the story and pacing of John Wick Chapters 1 and 2, and think this one runs a little long. There's no denying the sheer spectacle and talent on display here. From the stunt work to the camera work to the clean editing, commitment of the actors to be involved as much as possible, further exploration of this assassin underworld, or its beautiful, please don't ruin it, ending. The set pieces on display that showcase these massive, masterfully crafted action extravaganzas are simply breathtaking. It's a nearly 3-hour movie that's basically made up of 3 or 4 huge fight sequences with little bits of story in between, and a finale that's as intense and gripping as it gets. That's what we were all in the theater for anyway. I mean, it's the 4th one of these. We knew what we were paying for. They knew what we wanted to see, and they raised the freaking bar by gifting us some of the most eye-popping, unique, and inventive action to ever hit our screens. In that unlucky number 13 spot is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Well, they certainly made us wait for it, but I'd be lying if I said they didn't deliver, because they undeniably did. I love almost everything about this movie, from the variety of animation styles and the vibrant colors to the voice cast, hundreds of spider people or spider things, nuanced story, stellar soundtrack, and many twists and turns. Like I said at the beginning of this entry, we definitely waited for it. Almost 5 full years, but thankfully it did not disappoint. My only gripe is the same that many others have. It lacks a real ending. It's very much a part 1. Some people aren't going to mind that. Some people will be pissed, especially considering the movie runs for a surprisingly long 2 hours and 20 minutes. But I landed somewhere in the middle. Yes, I would have preferred a more concrete ending that left the door open over something that so obviously needs a conclusion. But the ending also got me insanely hyped for Beyond the Spider-Verse, so It's a bit of a double-edged sword because sometimes these part 1 and part 2s deter people, sometimes they work out. I'd say about 95% of this works out. The story never drags, even with the longer runtime, by the way. There are a few slower points for sure, but it's still all great and necessary character and story work. Even when it does get a little slow, I still wouldn't have complained about more because it's so well made, and I'm very confident it'll all pay off in Beyond the Spider-Verse, whenever we actually get that. It's pretty damn close to perfection, but not quite perfect. In 12th place, shocking literally everybody, myself included, is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. This one is arguably the biggest surprise on this list. To be 100% truthful, I thought the Shrek franchise had peaked back with Shrek 2, and that we'd never reach that high again. Shrek the Third, Forever After, and the first Puss in Boots movies were insanely mediocre. So a sequel 11 years later to a movie I didn't care for to begin with, in a franchise I thought was dead, didn't excite me much. But early reviews started to drop and heads began to turn, including mine. I gave it a shot, and to put it simply, the movie knocked my damn socks off. Probably the best animated movie since 2018's Into the Spider-Verse, and as you can see here today, one of the best movies of the 2020s so far. As I am on the team that advocates the facts spoken by the great Guillermo del Toro, animation is cinema. It is not just a genre, and in my own words, animation is not only meant for kids, and even if it is a kids movie, that doesn't mean it should be looked down upon as any lesser. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a prime example of that. Sure, it's a kids movie, but man oh man, some of the themes in here are shockingly poignant and mature. On top of that, the animation is stunning. I am so glad they steered away from the traditional 3D animation we got in every other Shrek movie, as this allowed the movie to really stand on its own, delivering exhilarating action, a truly terrifying villain, and larger-than-life spectacle. The voice work was exceptional. It was well-paced and had wonderful messages for all ages. A truly remarkable piece of work in my own humble opinion. In 11th place, just missing out on the top 10, is Spider-Man: No Way Home. Okay, so no, I don't think this is the best Spider-Man movie, and yes, I do recognize that a lot of the love, appreciation, and positive reputation this movie has comes from nostalgia and fan service. But that's not always a bad thing, especially when it's done this tastefully. I get that multiverse stuff has become a major turnoff for people, and I fully understand why some folks might not like this movie. But as someone whose first movie on the big screen was Sam Raimi's 2002 Spider-Man, this was everything I hoped it would be and more. I really dug the MCU and Tom Holland's first two Spider-Man movies. They're not perfect, but they're fun and do a good job of capturing the spirit and tone of the webhead. Thanks to that, I was obviously already looking forward to a third one long before it was rumored and leaked that Tobey and Andrew would be returning. That being said, like pretty much everyone else, when it did come out that they were returning, I was giddy like a small child all over again for literal months. Easily one of my most anticipated movies of all time. Thankfully, because all of that hype can often bite you in the ass, they delivered. Not only is this still very much a Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, but bringing in Tobey and Andrew felt mostly natural, and they served a purpose in the story and in Tom's character arc. Dafoe naturally steals the show though, as the returning Norman Osborn, while seeing Alfred Molina back with his mechanical tentacles was delightful. The other villains were fine. I wish they did more with Sandman and Lizard in particular, and I was sad that they didn't make Jamie Foxx all blue again. Plus, he was also just Jamie Foxx, like not even remotely the same character. The movie is chock full of memorable moments, epic set pieces, life lessons, and enough nostalgia, Easter eggs, and references to make a grown man cry. It's me, I'm a grown man. This was one of my favorite theater-going experiences ever. We went to the Late Show opening night with a sold-out crowd, half the people dressed like Spider-Man, and all of us were cheering and crying, and it was just so much fun. I will never forget it. In 10th place, the first of our top 10 is The Holdovers. I merely checked this one out as a part of my 2023 annual end-of-the-year cram. The stressful time of year where I realize how many movies I missed out on that I should probably watch before releasing any end of the year or New Year movie list videos. Much to my surprise, this one not only easily cracked the top 10 of that year, but became one of my favorite movies of the freaking decade and a must-watch Christmas flick for every year moving forward. Dominic Sessa delivers an impeccable breakthrough performance. Divine Joy Randolph deserved all of the awards, and Paul Giamatti delivered as he always does. The movie's many themes and messages are powerful and heartfelt. The comedy worked wonders for me, the music was great, and truthfully, my only complaint is that the first 30 minutes or so can be a bit slow. There's still some good stuff in there, but the movie really hits its stride when the three main characters take over. Nevertheless, this is undeniably a must-watch for all during the next holiday season. In 9th place, Dune 2021, Dune or Dune Part 1, whatever you want to call it. Damn it, this movie is so good and it comes so spectacularly close to being a flat-out masterpiece. Truth be told, I knew very little about Dune heading into this one for the first time. I knew the original movie existed but never watched it. I knew the books had been around for decades but never read any of them. What first got me interested was Denis Villeneuve's name being attached to the project. And then the build just continued as they stacked the cast, with it all culminating in some flawless trailers. The only minor gripe I have with it is one that I know many will agree on, which is that many of the characters are pretty one-dimensional. That doesn't mean they're not still interesting, but I feel like a lot more could have been done with some of the main characters. Sure, we do get to see a lot of this growth and added depth in the sequel, but I wish there was more in here too. Outside of that though, this movie is undeniably brilliant. Truly astonishing, if you will. A work of art. It is without a doubt one of the best looking and sounding movies I have ever seen. The craftsmanship on display is second to none. Villeneuve's direction, Hans Zimmer's Oscar-winning score, the incredibly well-realized world, the epic scale, it really is one of the most unique movies of the last decade. In 8th place, and this will definitely shake some folks to their core, is Barbie. I really didn't know what to expect with this one. I knew when I was first heading in that it had positive reviews, and if I'm being completely honest, I was primarily going because my fiance wanted to go. And believe me, she goes to see a fair bit of shit with me that she has little to no interest in, so it was only fair that I keep my mouth shut and return the favor the odd time she does look to go see something. Now, here we are, about a year and a half later as I record this video, and I am thrilled to say that I left the theater that night with a massive smile on my face. Wow, what a surprise this one was. Not only did it exceed my every original expectation, but continues to improve on rewatches. It's hilarious. I laugh until my stomach hurts every time. The costume and set design are marvelous, and every actor fully embraces their roles and gives into the absurdity at play. They knew what movie they were making and immersed themselves so perfectly. I think most of the major players here can be seen as huge standouts in their own right. Margot Robbie literally is Barbie. Ryan Gosling proved all of the haters and naysayers wrong with his Ken, and I also loved America Ferrera, Kate McKinnon, and Michael Cera. But honestly, if I were to go through the entire cast list, I don't think there was a single bad performance, given the context and self-aware, very meta nature of the movie. What shocked me the most, though, is how deep the movie got. It touches on some really touching things, like purpose, belonging, self-esteem, body image issues, and much more. But at its very core, it's a movie about the bond and connection between mothers and daughters. I adored this movie. I do not see it as overhyped or overrated, and in my mind, it's easily among the best of the 2020s. In that number 7 spot is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Given that Mad Max Fury Road is in my top 10 favorite movies of all time, it's safe to say that I was having very mixed feelings in the build-up to this one. Part of me was unbelievably excited to return to George Miller's Wasteland nearly a decade removed from Fury Road. But another part of me knew that it could never live up to the expectations I had, and I was worried I might be immeasurably disappointed. However, with it being on my list today, it seems safe for me to now say that George Miller, that crazy bastard, somehow did it again. Honestly, my only gripes were the occasional over-reliance on some ugly green screen / CGI effects, and the last third of the movie felt a bit rushed. Yeah, I said rushed. A portion of the 2.5-hour movie felt rushed. For me, at least, it glosses over the 40-day Wasteland War more quickly than I would have liked, and I feel that Anya Taylor-Joy becomes the Furiosa as we knew her in Fury Road, you know, with the buzz-cut and mechanical arm, a little too quickly. I would have liked a bit more build-up to those things, but if those are my only gripes when comparing it to the magnum opus that is Fury Road, that ain't too bad. The rest of the movie, in my mind at least, is pure perfection. Unfiltered, unflinching, madness-fueled chaos in all the right ways. Hemsworth is magnificently unhinged as Dementis, and Taylor-Joy delivers as the titular Furiosa. The younger version of Furiosa, played by Alila Brown, deserves more praise too, in my humble opinion, considering she plays the character for like the first full hour of the movie. This one definitely is an epic saga for the ages, and one of the best, if not the best, prequels ever made. In that 6th place spot, just narrowly missing our coveted top 5, is Avatar: The Way of Water. I'm not gonna lie to you all, when this movie started to put up numbers at the box office, I was laughing my ass off. Because I am someone who continued to be excited for this movie, continued to look forward to it, and continued to add it to my most anticipated lists year after year, because I think it was first supposed to come out in 2015. And people would laugh, and they would mock, and they would scoff. Folks on social media would always be saying they took too long to make a sequel, that Avatar had no cultural impact, that this was going to flop, and today it sits among the highest grossing movies of all time. It took in over $2 billion at the box office. And look, I know, money isn't everything, and people might not believe me now too, and that's fine, but I have been saying from the very beginning that we should never doubt James Cameron, especially when it comes to sequels. At the time of this movie's release, Cameron had already crafted 2 of the greatest sequels of all time, in T2 Judgment Day and Aliens. Yet somehow people still doubted and continued to hate on this movie before it even released. Well folks, like I just said, yes, money isn't everything, but like I also just said, you shouldn't doubt James Cameron, because Cameron indeed did it again. The visuals are among the very best in the industry. The visual effects teams behind this one made every single last little detail feel lifelike. It's simply some of the most flawless CGI out there. They changed the game and upped the bar with the original, and then they did it again here. The performances too were all superb. The pacing was surprisingly good for such a long movie. I mean, this thing is over 3 hours long, and it feels so grand and epic. The action is explosive, Quaritch returning as the villain did have me worried, but he kicks ass here, and is written back in wonderfully. And I would argue the biggest and best thing to stem from this movie is the family at the center of it all, because they are the heart and soul of this world. No, it's not this perfect masterpiece, but it is every bit as good, if not better than the original, which in my humble opinion has always been good, and I have no idea why it became so popular for people to hate on it over the last decade, but I certainly don't. And the first of our top 5 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I know a lot of people are going to be shaking their heads over this one, but let me remind you all that this is just my list. My own personal picks for the movies that best represent the 2020s for me. The movies I love the most, and Guardians 3 was my favorite movie of 2023. Essentially, this is one of the most satisfying trilogy cappers I have ever experienced. It is the culmination of everything these characters had been through up to that point, and it is stupendous. Emotional, hilarious, and thrilling. This movie hits all of those notes and goes far above and beyond my every expectation. I adored the first Guardians movie, and I have grown to love Volume 2, but this movie crushed me. My god, I did not expect to get that emotional. And it just continues to floor me with every rewatch. This movie reminded me and everyone else what Marvel can still be, and that they can still deliver emotionally driven movies with heavy themes, that they can still deliver spectacle like no one else, and that they can still make us care, make us laugh, and make us cry. This is proof that they need to go back to more focused stories and save all that other stuff for their big crossover movies. I don't need to ever see these characters again, where each and every one of them left off was perfect, and I don't want to see it ruined by milking this particular series. Or even worse, milking this series without some of the cast returning, and especially without James Gunn, who is the one responsible for making these movies what they are. In that number 4 spot is Dune Part 2. If this movie doesn't cement Denis Villeneuve as one of the greatest filmmakers and brilliant visionaries of our time, I don't know what will. I mean, this man has been on a spectacular run. I don't think a single one of his projects have missed. And this one is right up there with his best work. Some might even say it is his best work. I think a lot of studios out there need to take notes, because this is how you do a proper sequel. Bigger, faster, stronger, but still intimate and authored. The story picks up right where Dune Part 1, or just Dune, or Dune 2021, which I just recently talked about, and continues forward seamlessly, making the universe feel bigger, adding more depth to the various cultures and houses, and adding more detail to the astoundingly complex lore. The cinematography from Greg Fraser is nothing short of breathtaking, the visuals continuously had my jaw on the floor, and the performances here are some of the best of the decade. Hans Zimmer's score is unsurprisingly pure perfection. The use of color in this movie is staggering, and it ends in such a satisfying way that also leaves me desperate for more. Thank God we now know that Denis Villeneuve is working on Dune Messiah, his third and final Dune adaptation. I can't wait to dive back into this world and see where the story goes and how much more we can explore. In third place, grabbing that bronze medal, is The Batman. Heading into 2022, this was without a doubt my most anticipated movie of the year. I am a massive Batman fan, like most other people I guess, and that started in my early childhood, as I got hooked on, and to this day still am hooked on, shows like Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, and Justice League. They played a huge part in shaping who I would become, and so I still hold tightly to that love even now. I had high expectations, between my admiration for the character, Matt Reeves coming off of Dawn of and War for the Planet of the Apes, and a pretty well-rounded cast. Thankfully, it was mostly everything I could have hoped for. Sure, it's a little too long, and I don't normally mind longer movies. I mean, it might seem like I do because I keep complaining about length of movies and pacing, but check my letterbox. My 4 favorites are all 2.5 hours or more. There's just some very minor pacing issues in that final third. Nevertheless, Pattinson did it. He became the Batman and delivered a wholly unique take on the character. It's great because I can appreciate how every version is so different but just as good as the others. All unique, all beloved for different reasons, all Batman. What I enjoyed the most was Pattinson proving all of the naysayers wrong. He stopped being just the Twilight guy long before he landed this role, but so many folks weren't paying attention to his indie work. The rest of the cast, from Zoe Kravitz to Paul Dano, Colin Farrell, Jeffrey Wright, Andy Serkis, and John Turturro, were all superb. Again, wildly different versions of these characters than we have had before, and they all nailed their own takes on the material. The score and cinematography are just chef's kiss. Matt Reeves' direction, the detective work, the tone, the Batmobile, I could go on and on and on all day. They crafted something new yet familiar, bold and daring. Yet exactly what die-hard fans wanted. It's a new take on the Dark Knight, the Caped Crusader, the Bat of Gotham, and it just landed with me. In second place is Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. Well, Nolan did it again. Yes, like your average white male cinephile, Nolan is my favorite director, and that's merely because his movies occupy many spots in my all-time favorites list, including 3 of them being in my top 10. Aside from some pacing issues in the last 45 minutes or so, there's that complaint again. Trust me, I love long movies. I have no other complaints. Even that one complaint is very, very minor too, as you could probably tell by this movie being in second place. The movie simply doesn't have a single weak link. Every performance ranges from at least insanely solid to flat out phenomenal, quite literally award-winning. Murphy and Downey Jr. had my vote for the Oscars, and they got the recognition they deserved for their impeccable work. But so many of the supporting performances should not be slept on. In fact, I don't think any of them should be slept on. The story is marvelously told from Oppenheimer's perspective, as the script itself, in very unorthodox fashion, was written in the first person. It's a very dark and morally conflicting story that I felt they handled with such care and grace. Not everyone will feel this way, but hey, this isn't everyone's list, it's mine. The point is, the story understands and flawlessly depicts the fact that there is no right or wrong answer. They take the time to argue every side of it, and I felt that was what really gave this movie its edge. It's a touchy subject for some, and understandably so, but it's a piece of history nonetheless, and an extremely important one too. I mean, these people quite literally changed the world and altered the course of the future. Visually, it's enthralling, with captivating cinematography and yet another instantly iconic score from Ludwig Göransson. So many sequences in here left me speechless, and I won't be forgetting them anytime soon. The symbolism and framing of certain scenarios from key characters' perspectives was a work of art and clearly marked purpose, intent, and unparalleled craftsmanship. This was indeed a vision brought to life in its truest form by one of the best to ever do it. And number one, my pick for the best or my favorite movie of the 2020s so far is Top Gun: Maverick. I'll be honest, it was an incredibly tight race between the top 3 or 4. I kept swapping them around, but I feel satisfied with where everything ended up. It was not an easy task, but as of the end of 2024 and beginning of 2025, I believe that Top Gun: Maverick is in fact the best movie of the 2020s so far, or at least my favorite, or the best in my opinion. This was the first movie of the 2020s where I felt like I was back in my element, back where I belonged, and thought to myself, oh yeah, movies are back. Yes, we did have The Batman a few months prior, and Spider-Man: No Way Home a few months before that. Both movies that did extremely well, but at the time of their release, my theater was still enforcing social distancing in the snack lines, still enforcing masks, and still having the theater seating spaced out, although I do miss that last one. But Top Gun: Maverick was the first movie I went to where all restrictions were lifted. No masks, no stickers on the floor, no marked seats, just a sold-out, jam-packed movie theater loaded with people happy to be there and excited to experience a brand new movie on the biggest screen possible. It was bliss. It was me, my fiance, my brother, my parents, and my fiance's parents, all big fans of the original Top Gun, all skeptical but hopeful for this legacy sequel, and it simply blew our collective minds. The story, the legacy of the original, all of the characters, both new and old, were all handled with such care and passion. I mean, dude, that scene between Cruise and Kilmer, damn, that got me good. The connection and friction between Teller's character and Maverick, exceptional. The newbies learning how to work together alongside Maverick on his own journey, marvelous. The training and dogfights, unmatched. There's so much to love here. You feel like you're in the cockpit with these pilots. It's got a surprising amount of depth and emotion. The characters and their stories are relatable, and director Joseph Kosinski continues to prove himself as he just keeps upping his game over and over again, solidifying for me that he should already be a household name. Whether you agree or not, Top Gun: Maverick is my end of 2024 pick for the best, or at least my favorite movie of the 2020s so far. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments below what you thought of my picks for the 20 movies of the 2020s so far, and what your picks would be. As a reminder, this is the revamped BAMTube Movies, and it is your one-stop for everything movies. Be it top 10 videos like this one, ranking videos, video essays, versus videos, tier list videos, I have it all and so much more, along with your daily nerdy news wrap-ups. A series of shorts where I keep you up to date on everything movies, gaming, and TV related. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that little bell icon so you don't miss a thing. As always, folks, I thank you all so very much for watching. Stay happy, healthy, and safe out there. From myself and the rest of the BAMTube team, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time, and that's a wrap.